What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Blood on the Razor Wire TV, where we bring it to you real and we bring it to you raw. Today, we got a guest on that I could kind of relate to. His name is Chad. I have two Chads today. He was also sentenced to 40 years. Damn. Must be my twin, right? And he also was released on compassionate release after Trump passed the First Step Act. But we spent some time at Big Sandy together. We were there at the same time. We know a bunch of the same people. But we'll get into his story. Chad, tell the people who you are, talk about where you're from, and a little bit about you.
First of all, we have a lot of things that are parallel. Like you just said, to the name, to our sentence to 40 years, to be in the drug game, and Big Sandy. And I think that's kind of what, brought me to you. Some people have read your book, and some people have read mine, and the similarities that we talked about. It led me to you, and I was checking your website out, and I reached out to you yesterday, and here we are today. But who am I? Today, I run a nonprofit that helps inmates acclimate to prison. That's the big thing that I have going for me right now. I've been out for a little over 2 years, and just like you, I did close to 2 decades in federal prison.
So let's talk about how old you were and how you ended up there. How old were you when you got arrested?
And that was in 2004. I was 25 years old. I got arrested by the federal government.
25 years old. What were you doing in the street?
What was I doing? Mainly, I was selling ecstasy and cocaine.
And you get arrested by the feds? Any guns involved?
No guns, surprisingly. And that's when you think about my case, is when I got sentenced with the amount of drugs and the amount of co-defendants that I had. The judge said it was unique that after all this, no guns were found in my case. None of the 35 people had any handguns, shotguns, anything like that.
But you still end up with a 40-year sentence in federal prison. 25 years old, you're that dude, ecstasy, or you hang out at the club. What's life like for Chad at 24?
24 years old, I basically, did whatever I wanted to do. I drove whatever car I wanted to drive. I could go wherever I wanted to go, including, private airplane. Did take me long to get there to rise up in the game. But, all those things was, contribute to my downfall. Driving these nice cars around, fly around a private airplane. Yeah, I kind of got that attention of the federal government pretty quick by doing that dumb stuff.
But you're out there enjoying life, right? When we're 23, 24, you got the chicks, you got the cars, you're enjoying life, right?
Yes, sir.
And then the feds come, and you end up with a 40-year sentence. What's it like when you're in the courtroom at such a young age, and the judge says, I hereby sentence you to 480 months. That's 40 years. What did that feel like?
Well, I tell you what, those, 480 months, it rang in my head for years, after being sentenced. To me, it was almost like being in a movie. I couldn't believe that I put myself in a situation to be, headed a 40-year sentence. The whole time I'm hustling, I make it a point to be nonviolent. I make it a point not to have guns around me. I knew my day was coming. I didn't know if it'd be as bad. And, I was eager to the federal laws of, conspiracy. So it was like being in a movie, sitting out courtroom and getting 40 years in prison.
What about your parents? Were your parents there when it happened?
My parents, when I got sentenced.
Yeah.
Yes, they were there on the day of sentencing. Sadly, I didn't want them to be there, because I knew they would hear a lot of things about me. Some were true, some weren't. But I do know they felt an obligation to support me, and, I didn't fight them to come, but I didn't want to be there. I knew it was going to be, one of the worst days of my life, which was close to it. It just a bad day all around for my family.
USP Big Sandy, is that the first federal prison you go to?
Yeah, man. USP Big Sandy. I got to USP Big Sandy in 2004. That was the very first federal prison that I've been to.
That's right when it first opened. It's not really rocking in 2004, is it?
Not yet, man. Not yet. Not yet. It was a mix of a brand new prison, and a medium security. And I was a bit surprised when I got there. Of course, things were happening, but it wasn't rock and roll until 2006. But don't get it wrong. There were still a lot of things going on, but it wasn't like you know years 2006, and obviously a couple of years after that, where it was at its peak of violence, nonsense going on.
Would you say 2008 was probably the worst year at Big Sandy? That's when Stevie Burke and Adam Oliveri and Bam is there. The ABTs are there. Do you think that's when it really starts rocking?
I think 2006 that was the most. That was, to me, the peak of it. That's when it all started. And I'll tell you what, Chad. If I'm not mistaken, you came a little bit after 2006. So, an interesting recipe. Big Sandy, a lot of things were happening. 2005, 2006. We had a couple riots, and I had 3 murders, back to back in 2006. But what made it interesting is when they closed USP Marion, they closed USP Leavenworth. So an influx of inmates came to Big Sandy, and they came from USP Marion and USP Leavenworth. Now, the reason why it got kind of volatile, so to speak, because a lot of these original gang members that are already at Big Sandy, they had run of the yard. But when these guys got out of Marion and Leavenworth, now if they had a higher rank, now they had the leverage, and they would run the yard. So even though gangs got along in 2005, 2006, when these new leaders came, these gangs wouldn't get along as much as they were, and it became infested with violence, with drugs, and of course how it is when you got money involved. It gets pretty nasty, and that's kind of what I mean by a recipe for disaster there in 2006.
Were you there when Bam showed up?
I was there when Bam showed up.
So just so people know, man, Bam is Aryan Brotherhood gang member, the top-notch guy for the ABs at that prison at one time, has the keys, kind of comes in there and thinks he's the boss of all the white dudes. That's kind of how it goes, right?
Yeah.
Do you feel like, let me ask you this, do you feel like the ABs, just because they're ABs, they feel like, man, we're the top of the food chain, we run this shit?
I got mixed feelings about it. I respect the Aryan Brotherhood because of what they did in California when the whites were getting suppressed. I have a lot of respect for that. It wasn't, for the Aryan Brotherhood, a lot of bad things would have happened to a lot of white guys did in that system. Now saying that, fast forward 10, 15 years later, there comes a bit of arrogance with some of the, not only Aryan Brotherhood guys, but California guys at that. There are different breeds in California. These guys from California, they're not like these guys from Texas. They're not like guys from the East Coast. It's a different vibe to them. And now I respected Bam. And on the sole fact is one of the guys that I ran with was one of his guys. So it was a mutual respect between me and Bam.
I mean, you're a pretty big dude. How tall are you?
I'm about 6'2".
6'2". How much you weigh?
About 230, 225.
Did you feel like when you were in Big Sandy, anybody started to kind of like recruit you? Because I know you end up, for those that don't know, I think you end up tipping up, right?
I did. Yeah, I did in a couple of years. No, at first there was nothing like that, but you would get these guys that have been there for a while that would kind of push you in a direction where, you almost had to do something. But they're so used to these guys coming to the system and wanting to be someone. And for me, when I got there, I didn't want to go hard and be hard. I kind of wanted, just sit back and do my time without anyone messing with me. But I did see a different, breed of guys when they came in. They were up for anything and what we call dummy missions. And these guys that have been there for a while, they read these guys, and and it's almost a little bit of weakness when these guys come in and want to prove something, because now, you listen to anyone your whole life, and now all of a sudden you want to come to prison, listen to somebody tell you what to do. they didn't make any sense to me. They would put somebody on a dog mission to go stab this guy, go jump this person. And they had nothing even to do with it. But these guys pulling the strings, all the yard were kind of forced, some of these people, some of these younger guys mostly, to do things. So, and I have a funny saying is, I never, I never would be told what to do. So that's why I never joined the army. So it's kind of funny, that, coming to federal prison, not you wouldn't listen to someone and be told what, just didn't make much sense.
Just so people know, when I say the word tipped up, some people watching don't really understand what that means. That means pretty much that you're joining a gang. Eventually, you end up joining what? The Aryan Circle?
Aryan Circle, correct. Yep.
What's the recruiting process like? What brings a guy like you into the Aryan Circle? Are they like, hey, what's up, man? This is what we're about. They give you white literature. I mean, how's it go?
No, not one bit. It was, for me, it was about money. I've always had a bit of a hustler sense, and when I got to the yard of Big Sandy, I created ways to make money, and that was either running a ticket, selling drugs, selling cigarettes. There was all kinds of hustles that you could do. So, and some of the guys that end up being associates with happen to be members of the Aryan Circle. So it was no like recruitment, they didn't come to me and say this or that. It ended up being the guys that I hung out. It would take a couple years for me to join the Aryan Circle. And trust me, they tried initially, but now I told them, you got friends for life. For me, but right now I'm good. So we made way to make money while we're there. So it was a give and take thing. So and they had this guys that drink homemade china with, and doing other nefarious things on the yard. This is fun individuals to be around. We had a good time.
You had a good time in prison?
Had a good time in prison, believe it or not.
That's sad to say, right? Because I'm going to bring you back to something else. Because we might say we had a good time, right? There were times when you're like, man, you're laughing, you're joking, you're playing. Yeah. But when you laid out at night, man, I think that you could think back and be like, damn, man, I think I'm having fun here, but really, I'd rather be in the street having fun, riding a jet ski, or, taking care of my kids, or hanging out with my family, or throwing a football, or I guess drinking at home with your boys, or watching a football game, right? I mean, that's the real fun, right?
You're right about that. And it would come a full circle, a few years in my sentence. But at that time, even though I had 40 years, to me it was a life sentence. I was never getting out. This was my home, and I was going to make the best of it. And eventually, I would turn my life around, and I would turn my back on drugs, alcohol, and certain people, because those were the things that I wanted to see. I wanted to be at home, having birthday celebrations. I wanted to be at home for New Year's and Christmas. But at that time, for my first 2 or 3 years, it was sad to say, and it was about getting drunk, and all this turbulence. It made it fun. It made it fun, and I'm so glad that I turned my life around. A few years after this, because I got so sick and tired of it. I got so sick and tired of all the consequences. But yeah, I mean, you hit on the head. Fun. That is a good word to go back to. And was it fun? Hell no. But at that time, to me, put in my situation, I was making the best of it.
You were trying to get
right.
I know what you're saying. I had a 40-year sentence, and I was there at the same time as you. Pretty much what you're saying is you were just trying to get through the day. And you said something, and you said it before I was able to get there. But with a 40-year sentence, I mean, you said, look, I felt like I was never getting out. What was it like when you went there? Because I want some young dude to hear this today. What was it like when you laid down and you had fun that day, and you laid in your bunk, man, and then you thought, were there times when you panicked and you're like, damn, I ain't never getting out of here? What was that like? Because I know you had them nights.
Especially with, especially having a young daughter at that time, and just like on the street, fast thought is short-lived. And that's what it was. And to me, it was a temporary thing to repress how I felt in prison. But of course, your real feelings after drugs and alcohol, those natural feelings come back to you. Yeah, when you're sitting on that bunk, not drinking anymore, when you're not high, it comes back, and that's when emotions hit you the hardest, and that's when it hurts. Yeah, that's when it hurts. But see, that's why so many people are trying to drugs and alcohol, because they don't want to feel anymore, and that's how it was. I didn't want to feel anymore, so drugs and alcohol was my escape for a few years while I was incarcerated.
Definitely understandable. I've been there. I've been through it. I know what it's like. Let's talk a little bit about, we're going to get into what you're doing, the great things you're doing in your life. We're going to talk about your book, but let's talk a little bit about BAM. Let's talk a little bit about the Aryan Brotherhood and the Nortenos. You were there for that little riot, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So tell me what that was like. Did you see it? Were you on the yard?
No, but one of my best friends at that time is Crow, and I wrote about this incident in the book, believe it or not. They were on the yard, I guess having some kind of meeting, and at that time, the Nortenos, they had a hit out on BAM from something else. And my associate, my good friend Crow, was out there. Crow only has one arm. Crow had one arm. So that day, BAM, had some bad things happen to him. Some California guys, some bad things happened to him. But Crow, he was stabbed over 30 times. He had one arm. And, some of these Norteno guys was guys that he actually played cards with, guys that, he wrecked with. But from what I understand, BAM knew this was lingering, and he kind of let it go, for this. Do you know anything about BAM today?
I don't know. I don't know what happened to him. I think might have got killed or something.
BAM got killed. BAM got killed over this same incident that happened at Big Sandy. For what I understand, when he hit the street, wasn't even months after that. Either in San Diego or Los Angeles, where he lost his life. Let
me stop you for a minute, right? So the Nortenos and the ABs, they're going at it. The yard's off the hook. If wild things are going on, Nortenos are winning. There's not many white dudes out there. Not many people to help them. There's actually one dude out there that doesn't help, and we'll talk about what happens to him in a minute. But this riot's going on. Really, it was over a drug den, right?
If I'm not mistaken. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, that's what it was about. And you're right. There was not that many white guys out there. 10, 12 at the most. And if you remember Big Sandy, just calls you on the yard when you're right there, because they had it separated into 4 different sections. So if someone's in a different section than they are, they can't get to them because of the perimeters of the fence. So yeah, there was, from my understanding, a couple of guys that didn't help out, and they would have severe consequences after that, because as you know, no matter what car you're in, being white, it doesn't matter if you're in a circle or you're a brotherhood, if whatever. If there's a situation going on with another opposite race jumping on them and they're outnumbered, you're supposed to help no matter what. Even if you don't have a weapon, you are supposed to give hand. And and sadly that happened with BAM over a drug debt. That was the case, and a lot of people got hurt that day, sadly.
He ends up getting stabbed a few times himself, right?
Right.
If you were on the yard, what would you have done?
If I was on the yard, I definitely would have helped. Definitely would have helped. Just when you're in that kind of environment, you're it's these prison rules and convict code. You know what you have to do at that time. And for the individual, or two that didn't help out, I see two ways to look at it. One, he was getting ready to go home. The guy Sean that I'm talking about, he's not too far from the door. You don't want any trouble. So I can kind of see his point, but it was just a bad situation all the way around. For that.
Definitely a bad situation for everybody involved out there. Now, the guys that didn't help, what ends up happening to them?
They were going to get beat off the yard.
Some people are watching, they don't know what beat off the yard means. So tell them what beat off the yard means.
So beat off the yard means, people of your own race will attack you. Usually numerous people will attack you. So you get jumped. I mean, you could get a weapon to you, but for the most part, they'll just jump you, and they'll beat you good. They will beat you.
So if you're out on the yard, man, something like that happened, and you're probably, I mean, the best thing for you to do is probably to help, because if you don't, it's going to be even worse, kind of, maybe.
Right. It is that you're going to get it either way. Either way.
Nortenos, man, they were pretty serious dudes when we were there, pretty militant, played no games, well structured. They don't, they really didn't like the AB dudes, right?
Yeah, I would be friends with a lot of Nortenos as time went on, and I went to other prisons. I was only at Big Sandy for right at 5 years, 4 or 5 years, and when I got to Coleman 1, there were all the Nortenos after the BAM incident, they all left. So when I got to the yard at Coleman, I was a little mindful of the Nortenos. And, it took me a couple weeks to even have a conversation with them. And then, but once that conversation was opened, we ended up being okay. So, and that's what I said before, there's a difference between, there's so many different, there's Area Brotherhood, there's, ABT, Area Brotherhood of Texas, and Aryan Circle. And you got a couple other small ones as well, from Tennessee and from the Southeast as well. So you can't really get that convoluted. And the Nortenos don't. They know what the Area Brotherhood is. Area Brotherhood, for the most part, is out of California. Nortenos are Northern California. So whatever their beef comes from, it's from the state of California, and with the Area Brotherhood alone.
Were there ever any times in there when you thought you might lose your life?
I did a few times. My first prison riot, in May of 2005, that was probably one of the scariest times that I've been in. Also, too, in 2006, it wasn't necessarily that was an immediate threat. We had a lot of racial tension in 2006, and it was rampant. And we had another riot, the smaller one in A2 or A3, where some white guys got drunk, did some things to a black guy, and it ended up being, something where 10, 12 white guys got stabbed. National Guard had to come in, but after that, the racial tension on the whole yard as a collective was pretty tense.
What did let me stop you. What did the white dudes do to the black dude?
What happened is one of the white guys bought wine from a black guy. Then after he drank it, he says, "I'm not going to pay you because it wasn't good." So the black guy was like, "Well, why'd you drink it for?" And the white guy was like, "Fuck you," using the N-word a few times. It escalated. Well, other people started getting involved before you know it, bodies were off the rail and everything else. But there's a cat from Boston named Bruce. That's where it all started at, was because of Bruce.
So it's possible that people could lose their lives in these places, and you might not be in the same unit. You might not be involved. Something happens in another unit, they send a message over, they're about to start stabbing all the white dudes. You could be one of the dudes, right?
That's the scary part. That's the scary part of just the uncertainty, because of the environment that you're in. It's constant, day in and day out. It's always different. I mean, every hour is different. I mean, you were in federal prison for, a USP for a while. The attention is palpable. I mean, you can walk around and bam, you just know something's going on. You can feel one group looking at the other. You can tell by guys walking different, something is going on. And and that's what it was for us. I mean, just I was going to the chow. What is it now? It was constantly something. Yeah, you can tell you can be sitting in your unit and you can be watching a certain set of guys, how they're leaving on the rail, what they're looking at. So it's pretty crazy, the uncertainty of that environment.
Keep a weapon on you in there?
All the time.
Where'd you have to keep your weapon at?
I called my baby girl, and I usually kept my baby girl tied up in my boxers right here.
A lot of times they didn't even search you back then. They didn't even care, right? The cops?
Nope.
kind of free for all, do your thing, do what you want, stab someone, go to the hole for 2 weeks, and you come back out, right?
For the most part, for the most part, it was, and also too, during my first 2 years, if you got caught with a shank, they would just write you up for it at the most. And a lot of times they might just take it from you. But they wrote you up, you got a weapons charge. By the time you go to DHO, they're going to take commissary from it. That's a good day. Man, I'm kind of going home. Well, I care about good days. So it was pretty much, it was a no-brainer to carry around a weapon.
Sad but true, right? And eventually, Chad, you changed your life. Let's talk a little bit about that. You end up getting out of Big Sandy, right? Where do you go after Big Sandy?
I went to Coleman 1.
When do you start to change your life? Is it in Coleman? Is it in the FCI? When do you start to change?
Believe it or not, it was 6 months into my bid in Coleman. 6 months that I was there. I got, Coleman was a real laid-back place. I say this, to compare Big Sandy to Coleman. When you got to Coleman, at Big Sandy, you had people that wanted to be somebody. At Coleman, you had guys that were already somebody that just wanted to be laid back. So there were a lot of the notorious gangsters, a lot of infamous criminals that you see on TVs, maybe cold case, FBI files, things like that. There was about a handful of them, but it was a laid back yard, even though there's a USP. Now there was violence, don't get it wrong, but there wasn't constant racial tension. There wasn't, this and that. It wasn't all the time. It was laid back. It was laid back, and it was different for me compared to Big Sandy. But as soon as I hit the yard, I fell in with the Aryan circle. And it's funny, while I was at Big Sandy, if you're white, you didn't even have a guy you talk to. Some of the white guys, they kind of put you down for it. We ate on that black guy so much for it. So whenever I got to Coleman, even though I rode the Aryan circle, I would end up being best friends with this guy named Jot. Jot, he was from Jamaica, just super laid back. But for some reason, we didn't have this rapport where we were super tight. And, for my first few months there, actually I could kind of sit back a little bit. I played volleyball. I'd have to wear my boots everywhere, like a Big Sandy. I could wear my tennis shoes when I want. When I played volleyball, I could play barefooted. So, I didn't have to go to the shower with a shank tied to my wrist. I didn't have to take a nap with a shank tied to my wrist. It was just super laid back. But saying that, there was a lot of drugs there, a lot of drugs. And, I got into full-fledged LSO while I was there. Fighting forces to obtain drugs and in large quantities. So I was doing the same thing that I was doing on the outside while I was doing 40 years in a maximum security penitentiary. So even though it was laid back, I was still doing the dumb shit that I was doing to get in there. So after about, I would say about 7 or 8 months, I had an incident to alter my way of thinking and would turn my life around. And if you want me to share it with you, I'd be more welcome to share it.
Yeah, share it. The people want to hear it. We can't give them a piece and not give it all to them. Let's go.
Okay. So I tell us in the book, I went through all these, large-scale drug deals on the outside with nefarious characters and was never scared. I've been shot at a couple times. That didn't change me. I knew the feds were watching me. That didn't change me. Got arrested, faced life in prison. That didn't change me. Got 40 years, went through one of the worst penitentiaries there was. That didn't change me. But when I got to Coleman, I went through 3 or 4 different cellmates. And, on my 3rd or 4th one, I was in there with a guy named Jimmy. Jimmy was a lifer for killing 3 people on federal land down in Louisiana. So one night, we drank, smoked together, but we were locked down that night for some reason. Early, some incident happened. So I felt comfortable enough asking this guy about his charges. So, we've discussed it before, but not in depth. So, while Jimmy was at the top bunk and I was at the bottom bunk, I said, Jimmy, do you feel bad for killing, 3 people? So a lot of times people that kill, someone, they will have they'll harbor regret of some form or fashion. So I was thinking that's what he said, because Jimmy was a very nice guy. He had a good heart. Now Jimmy was a drug addict, but he had a good heart, and I saw that in him. So he bluntly said, "I don't feel bad for killing no one. I just made their life short." So I'm just like, Jimmy, that's cold as shit. You made their life short? I said, that makes no sense at all, man. I said, man, that's some fucked up shit. Excuse the language. So he asked me, he turned around and me, what about you? Do you feel bad selling drugs? I said, no, I don't feel bad selling drugs. I'm nonviolent. I didn't hurt anyone like you did. So he jumped off the bunk, and he got kind of a fighting stance. And, and pretty much basically what he told me is, Chad, if I was not high on if I was not high on drugs, I would not have killed people. Because the people like you selling drugs to people like me, this is why things happen. He was, look, legally, you're not responsible for me killing no one. But morally and ethically, you should be just as culpable as I am for it. So at the end, since I said, man, just go to bed, man. You're not making any sense. You're not making any sense. So he'd go back in bed, and I laid on my bunk. And for hours, his words resonated with me. And, for the first time, it sucked because it took so long for me to get to a certain point. I saw drugs as being bad. And, I'm not responsible for Jimmy hurting nobody. But at the same time, some of the cocaine that I sold, some of the ecstasy that I sold, people probably did some bad things for that. They might have robbed a bank for their habit. They might have robbed their drug dealer to get that. Some bad things might have happened, not only below me, but ahead of me. Think about the guy that I got it from. Blood could have been shed because of that. So this conversation with this guy that killed people changed my way of thinking. Now, it wasn't like an overnight, well, I'm turning my life around. But I will tell you this, November 1st, 2008 was the date. That was the last time that I did drugs and sold drugs. And from that point forward, I would never drink homemade alcohol, moonshine, or whatever you call it, in prison. It was self-contained events, and it would take 3 or 4 years to completely turn my life around. But that was the catalyst that started my 180.
You end up changing your life in prison. Eventually, Donald Trump, as we said at the beginning, he passes the first step back. Do you write your own motion, or do you get a lawyer? What happens?
I wrote mine in pencil. I wrote mine in pencil because we were locked down due to COVID. They gave us access to the law library. We didn't get out, a couple hours every other day or whatnot. And I'm not mistaken, I was one, you were one of the first ones to do this, Mr. Chad Mark. You were one that used to have precedence for a lot of other guys like myself. But at that time in my area, when I did this, people laughed at me. And we talked about this, before your show. People thought I was crazy for even to try this, but I read cases like yours. I read cases from a lot of guys from New York. There's some mafia type guys. 4 or 5 guys, preceding me. I said, man, my case is similar to this. Some of these guys had life in prison and whatnot, but they turned their life around, and so even though some of the laws changed, they didn't get any love. So I used cases like yours. I used other cases, like in New York. Why I should be given compassionate release. Now, if you remember, before Trump, compassionate release was based on if you're a sick and dying inmate, or if you're an older inmate, or if you had a immediate family member that was dying. It wasn't meant for regular guys that are healthy. But, the vague language of being extraordinary and compelling reasons, it was so vague that we could put whatever we wanted on there to prove a point to the judge. Now, unfortunately, the judges in our cases, their hands are tied behind their back. When they give you that time, they have to give you that time. The mandatory minimum, that's what it calls for. But when Trump came in and changes, it gave judges a different look at some of their old cases and give some love to guys like me and you. And I'm happy to say that you've been out almost 3 years. I've been out over 2 years. We just up their break deservedly so. See, look what we're doing our lives right now. We're not only do we better ourselves, but we're trying to better everybody else around us, not only in prison but out here as well. So you're a true leader for what you're doing. And I love that. You being having a paralegal background, you help guys in prison, and you're doing the same thing today, man. I'm very proud of you, man.
Well, I definitely appreciate that, and I'm proud of you, and I'm glad to see you doing good things. You're out now. What's the name of your book?
The name of my book is Cross for Carteret.
And what we're gonna do, I'm gonna put a picture of your book up anyway while we're talking throughout the thing.
Oh, I appreciate it. So it's called Cross for Carteret. Carteret is the county that I'm from in North Carolina, not New Jersey. So there's a lot of emotions in there. So when you're crying, you can cry when you laugh, cry when you're sad. So there's a lot of emotions in this book, both sad, and happy. It's also subtitled "My Shot at Redemption." I fought my way through, through federal prison for nearly 18 years. Not only physically, emotionally, and mentally, but I fought to ultimately, get out one day. And, if I didn't turn my life around, I would still be there till I'm 61, 60 years, maybe even more. I mean, I know you have a lot of friends with associates that you were, cool with back in the day. They got more time now. You might have had a guy come in with 5 or 10 years, and now he's got 40, 50 years. Or you might have had a guy that's doing 30, 40, now he's got life in prison. So, I had to fight for my way out. And, my book is not about redemption, but it's also about giving people hope too, no matter what they're going through. It's never too late for change, and hope is always around the corner, and we can absolutely anything.
No doubt, man. I think it's, I'm going to check it out. I want other people to check out your book, people that are tuning in. I think a bunch of our subscribers might need a book like that. I think they should go check it out. Where can they find your book at?
This is on Amazon. It is on Barnes & Nobles. Or also too, I do mail signed copies out. And if you want to, my number, can I share my folder with you guys?
I probably wouldn't put your number on there, but maybe they can find you on your email.
Yeah, or Facebook. Facebook at Chad Holloman, and on Facebook you might see a couple of Chad Hollomans pop up. But this is the face that it has on there, and if somebody messages me, I can mail them a signed copy. That's not a problem at all.
That's what's up. So now you're out, you're doing this reentry thing, you're helping other people. I mean, that's a big thing. Reentry's a big thing. People get out of prison and they go back to prison because they got nowhere to go. They got no clothes, they got nothing. So what do? They go back to the street, and before long they're back in prison, right?
Yeah, and back to drugs. A lot of women and men, they like to escape reality with drugs, and drugs is temporarily. It's like a temporary fix. But if you're on drugs or drinking alcohol, it makes the better problems you try to avoid that much worse, because now your relationships with people are going to deteriorate, and people are going to trust you a lot less. I don't know about you, but that's one thing I like about turning my life around. People trust me. If I say something, I mean it. Being around, drug addicts for so many years, where all these guys, call home and, ask their parents for money, and, they create scam after scam, to obtain drugs and to feed their habit. I got so sick of, seeing, families are already hurt for their loved ones in prison, and now they're even hurt more because this individual was incarcerated doing the same damn thing that got him. Sometimes worse.
Chad, you've been through it, man. You were a young kid. You were living I guess you could say at that time, of course, we think we're living a good life, but we never see the penitentiary. We never see the 40 years. We never see what it's like to watch people get stabbed. We never know what it's like at that time to have to stab someone. We never know what it's like to see people die. And then you go there. You get a 40-year sentence. You see it. You've been through it. All the money in the world, I'd give it all back in order to be free and not have to go through what I went through. And I'm sure you would do the same. So before we go, there's a young man out there. He's watching the show. He might be, he might be one of them dudes, selling ecstasy. He might be a crack dealer over here. Might be a dude out there doing robberies. What message would you give them?
Consequences, bro. Consequences. They're always around the corner, and it might not be tomorrow, might not be next week, but consequences, man. And the bigger hole you get in, the bigger hole you get out of, man. And obviously with both me and you, we got just 40 years. We had a big asshole to get out of. We had a big asshole. So I would just, if a young guy was watching this right now, the money's not worth it, man. The money's not worth it. I don't have nearly as much money as I had back then. But I tell you what, I am in complete happiness. I drive a 10-year-old car with 100,000 miles on it, but it gets 20 miles a gallon. I'm not looking over my shoulder at who's following me. I can go to the mailbox. I don't have to worry about, people, taking pictures of me. I don't have to worry about people, doing me wrong. I'm not saying there's not some bad carriers in society, but for the most part, man, I got a good life, man. I have a good life, and I would not trade what I have now for anything. I was speaking at a recovery center a few weeks ago in Hawaii, and this girl, she got a kilo of cocaine. What would you do? And to me, it threw me off. And I just said, I walk away from it. She goes, "Are you serious?" But in her mind, she couldn't see past that. And to me, I'm seeing consequences with a kilo of cocaine. She's seeing dollar bills. So what I told her, I said, "Look, I hope you change your life before later, because you'll see things like this. You'll see things differently. That kilo of cocaine is just nothing but an object. Nothing but an object. So hopefully it resonated with her, and she can have full-fledged recovery, from her substance abuse.
You know what? I think that should be the message today. That sometimes, most of the time, when you're in the street, you've never been through it, you can see the money sign. You can see the car. You can see the plane. You can see the food and the clothes, but you can't see the consequences. But if you could not only see the consequences, but also feel them, then you would probably say, you know what? I'm good. I'm going to pass. So look, man, I'm going to close the show. I'm going to put your links up for your book. Ask my subscribers, go check out your book. I think they'll enjoy it. I think you're a pretty good dude, man. You come across as a great guy. And I definitely appreciate you coming on, sharing your stories, sharing your experiences. If you like what we're doing over here, hit that subscribe button. With respect, Blood on the Razor Wire TV. Until tomorrow, we're out.